Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, as well as taking the time out of your day. Today's topic for the DynamicPoint webinar is COVID's impact to employee, customer, and vendor portals. My name is Mike Marson. I head up business development for DynamicPoint, and I'll be taking you through the presentation as well as demonstration today of our portal application. As far as the agenda is, first of all, just a brief introduction of who is DynamicPoint and what it is that we do. From that, we are going to begin looking at COVID-19's impact specifically to the software sector, and then we'll break that down further into how it is impacting the demand for portals, whether it be customer, vendor, or employee facing. We'll break that back to portal objectives and look at what the purpose is for a portal, what's the reason for doing one, and why you would use Office 365 as that framework. All of our portals are based on the Office 365 framework. So we're going to go into why you would do that and what the benefit is of that framework. From there, we're going to go into a demonstration. We'll do a portal overview, look at a customer portal, a vendor portal, and then break it down to even further and look how you could use the portal applications to do entire business automation. So we'll go through an example there, specifically vendor onboarding. And then we'll close it up with some further reading, as well as any questions. Feel free to submit questions as we're going through this. I do have the question bar up here on GoToMeeting, and I'll do my best to show those as we have breaks in the various topics. So feel free to chat as you go along, and we'll go through this. It should probably take us about a half an hour. So I believe the meeting was scheduled for an hour. We should probably be able to make it through it in about half an hour. Okay, first thing, who is DynamicPoint, and what is our product approach and what it is that we do? And essentially, DynamicPoint is a software company that builds apps, and the framework for our apps is Office 365. So the analogy that I like to use, it's very similar to an app that you install on your mobile device, and that app resides on that framework and leverages that framework whenever it can. We probably all installed apps for our phone, and the first thing that it does is ask, can I use these various services of the mobile platform? Well, we do that same thing. We're not on an Android or an iPhone platform. We're using Office 365. So we have our products, of which today we'll be focusing on our portal application. It gets added to a SharePoint site, which is providing the security, the branding, document management, and the framework for our product. We're leveraging Power Automate for workflow, Power Apps for mobility, Forms for collecting additional details and data, and Power BI for reporting and analysis. So we are leveraging all aspects of that framework to make our product more functional, and obviously offer you this functionality at a cheaper price, given that most of our customers are already on this framework and already own it. So therefore, we're leveraging what they already own. And we've been doing this since 2009. Obviously, Office 365 wasn't around in 2009. We started off as a SharePoint development company and have evolved to focus solely on Office 365 as our platform. Okay, COVID's impact to the hardware software sector. I guess first comment, this is not intended to be scare tactics. I'm sure we've already had plenty of those over the past several months. This is just looking at a study that's published by Deloitte, understanding COVID-19 impact to the technology sector. And the thing to note, this was actually published back in March. And as we go through this, obviously we've had a little bit of experience since then, and we could look back on the hindsight advantage. And a lot of these things I think have been very true. And then of course the question that beckons is, where do we go from there? What will be the continued impact on COVID-19 on the software industry and the trends associated to it? So first one, that the individual who created this report at Deloitte said, delayed launch of new smartphones due to supply chain constraints and lower consumer confidence. I think we've seen that. We could probably all agree there has been delays in some hardware releases. Companies with remote working technologies are seeing increased demand. Well, no kidding there. I guess all you have to do is say Zoom, and everyone knows that of course has gone through the roof. Security software will increase as organizations race to secure endpoints. Again, probably no surprise there. VPN software and anything around security, given that people are working from home, has taken off. And hardware companies have seen a major demand to support employees working from home. And I think anyone who tried to buy a computer in the initial phase of COVID would obviously testify that that was long wait times, et cetera. I think most of the manufacturers have caught up since then, but there most certainly was a large delay. So, of all these ones that impact the hardware software sector, which one is specific to what we're talking about? And it's this one right here, the remote working technologies, right? The idea of automation in that users are working from home, and the desire to make that easier and more streamlined, of course, is imperative. And then these were obviously predicted, like I said, back in March. I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb and say, okay, now that we've been here, where is this going to take us, right? Where are we going to go from here? And what we have seen from DynamicPoint and customers and prospects coming to us and their interest in various products. We'll talk about where we foresee that going as COVID sort of settles in and people continue to adjust to the new business environment. All right, we'll keep it going. First of all, what is the objective of a portal? Why am I doing this? And that's a hard question to answer because portal is one of those words that means various things for the type of organization it's serving, as well as the ultimate end user of the portal. And generally speaking, the end users of a portal could be classified in the following three buckets. They're either coming from a customer perspective, a vendor perspective, or an employee perspective. And our portal product is not geared towards necessarily one of these use cases. It's actually a framework such that you can enable that data and that sharing of that information from either your ERP or CRM system using this Office 365 extranet as being the front end, and it could accommodate really any of those use cases based on the configuration of the product. So if we look at typical use cases for a customer portal, managing my company information, sharing contracts, order entry, I want to go ahead and place orders. This is usually more from a reseller or distributor perspective, not a e-commerce, if you will, not intended to be an Amazon type experience. Sharing inventory, payment processing, help desk, the ability to log tickets, see status of tickets, etc. So those are some examples from a customer perspective. From a vendor perspective, again, managing company information, terms and conditions, looking at purchase orders that have been submitted for that vendor, maybe editing them, allowing the user or the vendor to put in delivery dates and shipment information. Payment status associated to invoice, and then again, confirming such thing as shipping data and status associated to the POs that the vendor is fulfilling. On the employee side, it really varies. Generally speaking, we see two areas of interest. One is on the more of the HR and the payroll, such things as handbooks and time entry. And then the other aspect is more on the operations perspective, project management, looking at fulfillment and insight into company operations, and then reporting and analytics. So employee portals could really be separated into two types. One is more targeted towards HR and payroll, and the other is more just sharing operational data with those employees. So, the first question is, why are we using Office 365 as this framework? And before we get to that, we'll talk a little bit about, again, this architecture, right? We are using an Office 365 SharePoint extranet as being our platform. Extranet, if it's in the case of customers and vendors, it can be considered a intranet if employees are accessing it. And our app is installed on top of this SharePoint Office 365 portal, and the app enables the collaboration of the data with your CRM and your ERP system. And we're doing that by making a connection to the data. So we're not replicating anything from the ERP or CRM system. We're actually doing live queries and using the application program interfaces into those systems to provide a window to that data to, depends again who the use case is. If it's a customer portal, then we're providing a window to our customers. If it's an employee portal, of course, it's going to our employees. And if it's a vendor portal, of course, it's going to the vendors who we serve, or who serve us, I should say. So that's the architecture. The reason this falls so naturally into a Office 365 SharePoint site is really what the platform includes. It includes all of these various building blocks that are imperative to getting a portal up and running. SharePoint from a document management and collaboration, content management. When we start talking about workflow, Power Apps will come into play. So various things such as notifications and approvals for interactions that have occurred on the portal. Automation, mobility, reporting and analytics. So, the first answer is obviously the advantage that it provides from a functionality perspective. The second is chances are you already own it. So there's obviously some reduced costs associated to that and some efficiency. And again, it's not like we're trying to cram it in because you already own it. The functionality is a fit as well. So you're using something that you, generally speaking, our customers already have in-house. Maybe they're already using for such things as email, obviously Word and Excel, as well as collaboration in OneDrive and SharePoint and things like that. And we're basically just piggybacking on that framework to obviously provide this functionality at a reduced cost. And the last thing is the licensing. Microsoft makes it very advantageous to use this portal for collaboration because external users don't cost you anything extra. They are, I guess, quote unquote free, I should say, included with your Office 365 subscription, and they're unlimited. There's no limit on how many external users you can have coming into the portal. And last but not least, it's secure, right? Like obviously this isn't a public site that everyone could access. People have to be invited into it and granted permission. So that is also desirable when we're talking about a portal that is geared towards a very limited community. We're not sharing our data with everyone. This isn't just a website that I could just go browse. I need to be invited. The company gets to control my authorization and my security in order for me to even log in. So moving forward. Well, and the last reason, here's sort of our little joke. It is pretty, right? I could pause really quick and just show you, Microsoft has taken this traditional SharePoint site and through what, they now call modern sites, have improved it drastically. Everyone, who remembers the old versions of SharePoint, maybe it was a little, you could tell it was a SharePoint site and it was a little bland as far as layout and design. And obviously they've put a lot of effort into that. And if I were to just to clear out my presentation really quick, and go to this site, Microsoft has what they call the lookbook, which is basically a whole site geared towards look and feel and design examples for SharePoint extranets. So if I click on my See Examples here, you can see here they have all these various examples. I could filter by the type of site that it is. And then if I were to go into any of these, if I say, hey, this looks good and it meets our branding and what we're looking for from a customer or vendor portal, they really tell you how to build it, or you could add it directly to your tenant. So, it's come a long way as far as being a responsive mobile-friendly site, as well as accommodating various branding without it, taking a ton of development or building a website from scratch. Everything that you see here is just out of the box web parts. So this is just one example. If you guys want to peruse it, it's just the lookbook is what they call it. And then Microsoft gives you various examples of what your portal could look like. So with that, let's go right into a demo. And first of all, we're going to look at a customer portal and what that offers. And then we'll go into a vendor portal. And then we're going to take a pause and look at various business automation topics. And then we'll dive into a demonstration of how a portal can not only be used for collaboration, but as well as doing entire automation of business processes. So starting here, we have our customer portal. So this is something obviously we would invite our users into. I have some various calls to action here, such as a customer could see their sales orders, maybe create a new order, look at their invoices, process returns, create service requests. You can see I do have integrated chat. So if you'd like to integrate chat with the system, you most certainly can. It's just a matter of a script that needs to be added to the portal. Other various calls to action here, such as my contact information, contacting DynamicPoint, or managing my profile. Oops, I'm sorry. As well as a integrated Power BI report here, just showing various metrics and analytics for the customer. So the thing to note is any report that we're showing within the portal is being displayed using a web part that we developed, so it is filtered. This isn't just a standard Power BI report. I mean, it is a standard Power BI report, but it is being filtered for the specific users who are coming in, such that they're only seeing the data that's applicable to them. And the last thing I just have is a simple news feed, as well as a document library that is showing various contracts or statement of works that I have shared with the customer. So these could be used as templates or such that they could download them and submit them to my organization if I want to provide that documentation for my customers. So let's start looking at some of these calls to action. Let's click on the first one. We'll start with a really simple one, sales orders. I say it's simple because from a configuration perspective, this is going to be the more basic one I show you. And that what it's going to do is render orders from my ERP application directly to the SharePoint extranet. And again, this is using this app that DynamicPoint has developed. And my customers could come in here and see the status of my orders, maybe drill into it, look at the details, see such things as shipping information, pricing, etc. So one of the more basic examples that I have, but what it's showing is really I could configure the portal to collaborate with the customer data that resides within my ERP product and give them a secure window into that data. Now, why? Going back to our introduction, the hope of this portal is that it's automating something that was previously manual. So maybe customers were, calling in, or I was sending emails with order information or something like that, and I want to provide that to them, on a self-service basis, such that they could go look at this information without contacting or me having to send an email with the details of that information. Also see, you have a print icon here. And what ultimately this is going to do is call any report from the ERP. Of course, this case I have it configured to speak with the sales order report, such that if there's any report that I need to submit to my customer, something as a sales order or even an invoice or a statement, they could actually generate that in a real-time fashion directly from the portal. So something to note, again, the portal is not synchronizing data. The data that I'm showing you is coming from a real-time fashion out of the ERP. We're not creating our own reports. That, in fact, was an ERP report that we are just rendering in the portal as a PDF. So making our way up the food chain, right? So that was just a simple view only. If I go into the ability to create an order or edit an order, this is going to get a little bit more sophisticated in that I've configured the integration with the ERP to enable not only viewing the data, but maybe I want my customer to change their requested date for orders, or if they switch locations or want a delivery to go to a different location, they can edit that on the order directly and then submit it for review. So in that case, I've enabled edit such that they can interact with any of that information. Of course, anything I'm just showing you today is just an example. You could really enable interaction with any of that data. And it's all configurable as far as, what do I want to allow them to edit or just view or create. So if I were to create an order, this is going to make a couple calls to my ERP application, because in addition to leveraging the business data from the ERP, we also leverage the business logic. So by putting in some header information and I click the create button, we are going to call the ERP and then default all of the customer data for that order record. So all the things that would normally occur in the ERP if I went and created a new order for the customer, we are going to do that for them. But of course, we're not asking them their customer ID or anything like that because we already know it because they're already logged in. Again, if I want to change anything from a default perspective, maybe I want this shipped to a different location, or if I want to go ahead and add items directly to this order. The items that you're going to see here are being rendered again directly from a real-time fashion from the ERP, and they are being filtered such that I'm only seeing the ones that are applicable to my customer record and based on a price list that has been set up for my customer. So you see there the return in the pricing as well as unit price. One question that came in, could I configure an email notice with a direct link to the sales order? Absolutely, you could do that, right? So after we get past this first section of just looking at the collaboration of data, then we'll start talking about automation. And in fact, I could show that to you shortly. We'll start talking about email notifications that could be triggered as well as entire business processes. So could you link to the order in the portal? Absolutely. There is a URL associated with all of this information, and that could be generated from the ERP, or you could just drive them to the order page such that they could see all of their orders and then drill in from there. So either option is fine. Okay, so we created an order. We'll go ahead and submit it. In fact, we could pause right now and take a look at some of the notifications that I'm generating just based on my interaction in the portal. So if I go ahead and go over to my mail here, you can see here just in the last few seconds here, I got a new sales order submission. This is just a simple notification. It could also be an approval workflow, and I could show you that in a little bit. But this one is just a notification that an order has been placed. Here you can see this one's highlighting what I've changed on the order as far as updating of the quantity. This was the order where I updated the the sell to address. So I received a notification that myself as a customer has modified that order. So if I need to do something internally to make sure that's shipped to the right location, I could obviously confirm that. Yet another one, I just changed the request date on that. And the last notification was, again, the new sales order that I submitted. So from a customer portal, there's a few examples. We just looked at sales orders. We can most certainly look at returns or service orders or all these other various information. But for the sake of not being too repetitive here, we're going to shift and go to a vendor portal. Again, the portal is the same. Right? It's just my calls to action and the data that I'm integrating is different. So maybe for a vendor, I want to collaborate on purchase orders as opposed to sales orders because sales orders don't apply to vendors. And maybe I want my vendor to come acknowledge their POs or update shipping information or expected delivery date. So a vendor could come in here, obviously acknowledge this PO is being received, and then update it directly. Of course, I will get a notification for that. Maybe I want my vendors to respond to quotes, so they could go ahead and select any attachment within their system and submit that quote directly to me as an organization and kick off a review and an approval workflow associated to that attachment, or even add that attachment to my ERP application. So we can include such things as documentation as well that could be exchanged on the portal. So that was purchase orders. I did update one, again, the ability to integrate reports. If I go ahead and print a report here, as opposed to it generating a sales report, of course, it's going to generate the PO such that that vendor can save it, download it, print it, whatever it is that they want to do. Okay, so going back. So what we've covered is really just the basics or the beginnings, if you will, of the portal, in that it's essentially just the collaboration of data, right? I'm allowing my customers to or vendors to have access to data at their fingertips that they would not otherwise have access to or would have to call me. But generally speaking, we see there is a journey associated to this, right? You start off at sort of data sharing and sharing reports and things of that nature. And then as you make your way up the value chain, very much like the question asked by Jim, we get into workflow and entire business automation. And this is what we see as sort of being the longer term impact to COVID, is that the idea of obviously not sending reports or having a customer, call in and create a service case is very attractive. But as this pandemic sort of goes on and, dare I say, becomes the new normal, we see that people are moving towards not only collaborating with that data, but moving up that value chain and trying to automate entire business processes using the portal. So we will go ahead and carry on here, and then we'll go through an example. So first of all, what is that business automation? And I got, a silly picture here of a ski resort and, the idea of going through a turnstile. And obviously anyone who likes skiing or snowboarding knows that in most places, probably up until recently, the idea of the ski bum, probably a 20-year-old person working who just graduated from college and taking your ticket was sort of the norm. And simple analogy, but we've seen obviously a move to automate that even further, right? And some places are doing these, turnstiles because there's obviously no contact from a COVID perspective, but saving labor costs and then automating a process that was previously manual becomes, more imperative if those margins are down and if our customers are being impacted by decreased demand. The desire to automate business processes as opposed to having them being managed manually by individuals is most certainly on the rise for us, and we have seen a greater interest in that. So, a couple examples we'll talk through. One is a vendor onboarding process, and this actually came to us by one of our customers. They wanted to use a vendor portal, but in addition to a vendor portal, they wanted to automate onboarding of new vendors, which seems logical because I have my vendors already coming in there looking at their data, and they say, hey, we have to go through this large effort to bring new vendors into the system. Can your portal help us with that? And ultimately, we did, right? We configured that, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So it starts with this vendor request. New vendor comes in. I want to work with this person. We're going to go ahead and invite them to the portal and send them some documentation to complete, including some government forms. And then that's going to kick off a workflow. The workflow will entail an internal approval, as well as automatically creating that vendor in the ERP, and last but not least, inviting that vendor to the portal. So we're taking, something that's pretty manual in most companies, right? I get a new vendor on board, someone has to email them, say, hey, give me your W-9. I need information on, where I'm going to pay you, et cetera. And we're automating that using mostly this Office 365 framework in conjunction with the portal application. So we're going to go through that example. And then one more just on the customer side that we could cover. Contract renewal. Again, same idea, but we're going to look at it from a customer perspective. We're going to come through a contract expiring. We're going to request a renewal to that, and then lastly, kick off a workflow that's going to approve that request, as well as automatically update that contract's expiration date in the ERP product. So same type of idea, but just targeting more towards a customer as opposed to a vendor. So we'll go back to the application, and we're going to start out with a new vendor request. So this would be an internal person doing this, and they're going to say, hey, I want to work with this new organization, DynamicPoint. My contact there is Mike, and I'm going to put in his email. And I just have a simple form, by the way. This is using Microsoft Forms. You can see right here, very simple form. You could obviously add more fields, but I kept it really basic and just added my email and my vendor name. So an internal person would submit that, and what that is going to do is send an email to me, the vendor, proposed vendor, I should say, to invite me to the organization. So you can see here, this was actually generated by DocuSign. So Power Automate has integration with DocuSign. So I have a DocuSign account here that's kicked this off. And it has invited me to complete our new vendor form for onboarding. And I'm going to go ahead and click review that document. And it's going to open up DocuSign, which I'm assuming most of us have seen back in the day. And I have a pretty simple form here for vendor onboarding. It's asking me for such things as my address, etc. telephone number, banking information, type of organization I am, and then the dreaded W-9, right? So I could go in here and start filling out information, as well as the main reason for using DocuSign, the electronic signature. So we could go ahead and change that just to show you. I could go ahead and sign it. My signature is horrible, but we'll do something like that so you guys get the idea. And then voila, now I have an electronic signature for this W-9. I would obviously fill the rest out and finish the processing of that. So great, so I got invited. I, as a vendor, did my part of the puzzle, if you will, and completed the form. And what that's going to do now is kick off an internal review process. So this kicked off a workflow using Power Automate. So I have a new review task associated here. So you can see I have a link to that completed form. So I could review DynamicPoint submission and say, hey, does this look okay? Is everything complete? Do I want to approve them being a new vendor in my system? If you guys are familiar with Power Automate tasks, they could actually be approved not only from email, but from such things as the mobile application, as well as if you're using Teams, there is an app for Teams as well. So you don't have to manage it through your email. That's just one method. But if I were to bring over my Teams interface, you can see I have a new vendor request here. And in fact, it is that same request. I could actually either do it from my email or Teams, whichever one I do first sort of closes it out. So I could say this looks good. Please set up DynamicPoint. Go ahead and confirm that. So there, this one is actually no longer applicable. As you can see, it's already updated itself and saying I updated it somewhere else. And what this is going to do is kick off the next step in the workflow, which is going to create that vendor directly in the ERP application and send the vendor an invitation. So disclaimer on my invitation, I didn't spend a ton of time making it pretty. I could obviously brand this, put some HTML in here with some logos and make it look much more spectacular than I did. But you see you're a new vendor in our system. To access the portal, please click the following link. And if I drag this over to my screen, it's asking me to authenticate, because again, that is secure. And once the vendor is authenticated, voila, they're now in the vendor portal. So as you can see, that just took a basic vendor onboarding process, and through the power of the workflow as well as the portal interface, we automated that, and then we got a little help from DocuSign along the way, just because the electronic signatures and sending a government form in a proper format, DocuSign allowed us to upload that template. So if I were to take that same thing on a customer side, this one is probably a little simpler in nature. I have a contract status. I'm showing the contracts to my customer. Of course, these contracts have expiration dates associated to them. And the expiration dates, when they come due, they give me an email saying, hey, your contract is about to expire. Would I like to renew it? And of course, I would like to renew it. So it's going to bring me back into the portal, give me the ability to review all of my contracts that are expiring and renew it. By renewing it, it's going to submit the request for any updated documentation that I need or forms or anything I need to renew this contract. So again, disclaimer on my emails, they are pretty basic. Thanks for initiating the request. Go ahead and click here. This is just using forms. I'm not requiring electronic signature. So I did the renewal in forms as opposed to DocuSign. Has your experience been? What would you like to do? I'd of course like to renew it. What would you like to be your new expiration date? And I'll submit that. And if you guys paid attention to the dates there, when I refresh my screen, you'll actually see that that contract gets updated in a real-time fashion in the ERP product. So the expiration date is now showing the 28th of October. So a couple examples there, just how you could, use this platform that's being provided not only to share the information that people would be calling in for or submitting requests and other more manual applications, but you could use it to automate entire business processes, or at the very least provide a framework and oversight of that business process. So we are coming up a little over our half hour. I apologize, I thought I could get through it there, but we'll go ahead and start closing out. Further reading, oops, I'm sorry, forgot to turn off my phone, I apologize. Further reading on the topic, by no means can DynamicPoint take responsibility or credit for inventing these portal concepts. It's very much being introduced by Microsoft, and we are adding to it through our app our ability to share that information to the ERP product. So there's further reading out there put by Microsoft as well as on our website. And then last, just thank you very much everyone for joining. And here's contact information for us as well as our website, as well as my email. I don't see any other questions now, so I will go ahead and end the meeting, and thank you all very much for joining and take the time out of your day. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Thank you so much, and again, take care, and please let us know if we could be of help. Bye now.